We are going to look at how volunteerism is building our continent and how young people are volunteering on different areas in different aspects, and probably how our governments across Africa, how our governments across Africa are supporting volunteerism either through policies, legal frameworks, and every other aspect they can. We will see how other partners like the corporates, organizations who are involving volunteers, and even volunteerism that happens informally across Africa, because it is a spirit. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very nice and wonderful session that is going to happen. The time will be short, I can assure you. The conversation will not end today. It's just a conversation we are beginning, and we are linking this conversation to the IVD, marking the IVD, because we both know in the room I can see many people wearing the t-shirt that has the theme. If you have a t-shirt that has that theme, could you just rise up in 1 minute? Those who are in the t-shirt that has that theme. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Makofi kwao. Makofi means clap. Makofi kwao. Thank you, thank you. May you sit. That t-shirt is having that theme, the power of everyone. So this year's IVD theme is talking about the power of everyone if everyone volunteered. And so we are going to see if everyone volunteered maybe for a borderless Africa, if everyone volunteered for other agendas, development agendas that we have as Africa, and if every youth was a volunteer somewhere, somehow, what change would we have seen by now? And if everybody would decide today, then how much time do we have to see all the changes we want to see as young people in Africa? So ladies and gentlemen, without taking much time, I want to usher on stage our keynote speaker for this day. And our keynote speaker is coming all the way from down south in the Zambia, the permanent secretary in the ministry, or for the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts from Zambia, Mr. Do you want to hear the name? I know Zambians in the house already know the name, but others who are not from Zambia, do you want to hear the name? Okay, that is none other than Mr. Chileshe Kangwa. Welcome, sir. Welcome. And I hope as he continues, he'll also introduce to us some other guests that accompanied him to this session this morning. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Master of Ceremonies. Good morning. I heard that Kenyan youth are very vibrant and vigilant and energetic. And so I'm just trying to find out if that's true. Good morning. Okay, that's better. That's better. Thank you. I can introduce my team very quickly. I came with a team from Zambia. They're up front, and some of them will be on the panel. Maybe the Zambians can stand up and say hello. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is Youthconnekt, and so I'm hopeful that by the time we're done with this session, you and I and my team here can connect. Honorable ministers present, I'm not seeing any right now, but that's fine. Permanent secretaries present, the royal family, Africa Connect team, senior government officials, Miss Lucy Ndungu, UNV Regional Manager for East and Southern Africa, Mr. Mishak Odede Owino, Chairperson of Volunteer Evolving Organization Society of Kenya, the panelists, the youth of Africa, and particularly the youth of Kenya. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. Distinguished panelists, I stand before you today as the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts of Zambia, with a vision that transcends borders and embraces the collective spirit of humanity. Imagine if we had a world where every individual, regardless of nationality or background, comes together to volunteer for a borderless Africa Renaissance. As I envision this transformative movement, I picture a continent united in purpose, where the vibrant energy of the youth, the power of sports, and the creativity of arts and other sectors converge to create a renaissance that transcends geographical boundaries. Africa, with its richness in natural resources, cultures, languages, and traditions, has the potential to redefine itself through the spirit of volunteerism. Dear youth, volunteering is not just an act. It is a commitment to building a better future for all. Picture our young people, fueled by passion and a sense of responsibility, working hand in hand to address the challenges that hinder progress. As volunteers, our youth can contribute their time, their skills, and resources to uplift communities and foster a sense of unity. Through volunteering, our youth have an opportunity to amplify their voices. Collective volunteering empowers African youth to have a stronger voice in advocating for positive change. Through their combined efforts, they can address issues such as social justice, climate change, equity, and human rights more effectively. Africa is known for its rich cultural diversity. Therefore, volunteering brings together youth from different backgrounds, promoting cultural exchange and understanding. This can lead to increased unity and a stronger sense of shared identity. Volunteering exposes young people to different perspectives and global issues. It helps them become more aware of the interconnectedness of the world and encourages a sense of global citizenship. Volunteering also offers a platform for young people to take initiative, make decisions, and contribute meaningfully to society. This experience can boost their confidence and belief in their ability to bring about positive change. In Zambia, we launched the National Volunteer Policy on the 5th of December 2022 on International Volunteer Day. Government policies and other deliberate strategies, such as the Internship Volunteer Apprenticeship Program, currently being implemented in Zambia, have made it easy for our youth to volunteer. A youth here may want to ask, where and how do I start my volunteer journey? Dear youth, the starting point is right where you are. Look around your community as a starting point. That makes it easy for your work to extend to other communities and later, your nation and Africa and the rest of the world at large. If you're a youth in the health sector, you may start your voluntary services at a local clinic or any other health centers near you. A teacher who is yet to be deployed into the public sector or the private sector, you can begin there. Your volunteering journey can begin there. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, imagine a continent where every stroke of the brush, every note of music, and every piece of literature tells a story of a collective journey towards a borderless African Renaissance. Our youth become the ambassadors of a cultural reawakening, spreading the message of unity and cooperation. Dear youth, as you are gathered here, think of ways which you will make a difference in your country, your continent, and the rest of the world. speciality, and sector as you volunteer for a borderless African Renaissance. May I also state that volunteering connects you to a diverse range of people from all backgrounds and walks of life. Interaction with other people and fellow volunteers can be a rich source of learning and inspiration and an excellent way to develop strong interpersonal skills. Therefore, create meaningful networks as you interact with like minds. Volunteering will also help you develop new skills and enhance your curriculum vitae or CV or resume. Many volunteering opportunities involve helping organizations in more specific areas such as admin work, ICT, social media, marketing, fundraising, etc. These could lead to gaining essential skills in areas that can often prove valuable when searching for a job. Moreover, most volunteer opportunities are a great opportunity to learn skills such as teamwork, communications, relationship building, which are necessities in today's job market. Volunteering can help to expand and mobilize constituencies. It also is a platform for engaging people in national planning and implementation of sustainable development goals. Volunteer groups will help you to localize various agendas by providing new spaces of the interaction between governments and people for concrete and scalable actions. As we gather here today, let us reflect on the potential impact of such a movement in volunteerism. A borderless African Renaissance driven by volunteers signifies a commitment to sustainable development, social justice, and inclusive growth. It is a call to action, inviting every youth to contribute their unique talent and perspectives to create a continent that is not bound by borders, but connected by shared aspirations. In conclusion, I urge each and every one of you to imagine the possibilities that unfold when we embrace the vision of a borderless African Renaissance through volunteerism. Together, let us build a legacy that transcends time, leaving a mark in history as architects of positive change. The future of our continent lies in our collective hands, and it's through unity, volunteerism, and the spirit of youth, sport, and arts that will usher a new era, a renaissance that now knows no borders. Now, before I close, I want to connect with you. Is that okay? Is that okay? It's not part of my script, but I just want to connect with you because this is Youthconnekt. I am a product of voluntarism or volunteering. I remember as a young man, I'm much older now, in my mid-40s, look at your neighbor and say, he doesn't look that old. It looks kind of cool, younger and cool, you know what I'm saying? I remember when I was 19, I volunteered my services at a church. And whenever I was needed at the church, I would go there, clean the church, and do all kinds of works. Eventually, I was an usher. Eventually, I was a choir leader. Eventually, I was so many things. And then at some point, I was an associate pastor. And then I became a pastor. And then from there, I went to the US, studied theology, got a degree in theology, and was a member of great churches and volunteered in great ministries in the world. The starting point of that career was volunteerism. Volunteerism is simply sacrifice. Sacrificing your time, your energy, and sometimes a little bit of money to achieve your purpose. At the same time, I loved acting from the time I was 5 years old. And so when I was 9, a couple of years later, I'd be offered a contract to act in movies, to act on soap operas. And my career transcended from Zambia to Africa and now Netflix with the recent movie that we did. As a result of volunteerism, I looked at my country and there were certain things I wasn't happy about. I didn't like the way my government was being run. I didn't like the policies that didn't speak to young people. It frustrated me. I decided to join an opposition party, join a leader who had a different mind. And I don't know if he was going to make president. I didn't know if he was going to form government. All I knew is that I believed in his ideals and in what he stood for a better Zambia. And I joined. I volunteered. Before you know it, I was chairman of arts and culture in the party. No salary, no pay, time and sacrifice. I'll go to different parts of the country and I'd have to find money to attend those meetings in those different parts of the country. Time and money. Years later, 2021, August, the leader I followed became the president. And through the volunteerism, I happened to have found myself, through his appointment, permanent secretary in the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Arts. And so I encourage you, young person, that the time that you spend, the effort that you make, all the sacrifices that you're making in order to achieve that dream, that innovation, that invention, that idea that you have is not in vain, but it's a cumulative action and efforts that will ultimately lead you into a great destiny and a great borderless African Renaissance. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Another round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think, Honorable Kangwa, we are in the same boat. Volunteerism takes people places, yeah? And just before I invite the next person on the stage, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the house so that when the conversation happens, we get to know who is in the house. I did that on purpose because I knew this speech would move you and you may not even forget that anybody else is in the house. So ladies and gentlemen, VIO Society Kenya who are in the house, kindly, I want to see by a show of hands, VIO Society Kenya is an umbrella body bringing many organizations working with volunteers or engaging volunteers. UNV is number one. UNV in the house, United Nations Volunteers Kenya office and regional office. Thank you. A round of a clap for them. Yes, I can see Kezia on the other side. Thank you, thank you. VSO, who are in the house, VSO, just rise once. VSO Kenya, VSO, yes. I can see Patricia and the team of volunteers from VSO. Kenya Red Cross, who are in the house. Anyone from, okay, I can see the hands on the other side, Kenya Red Cross. Do we have Hope Worldwide Kenya? I know they were having some graduation for a certain project called Dreams. Africa for SDGs, any other, okay, I can see Lennox is there, the man who has the greatest innovation in the volunteer space. Lucy, you remember him, the one who makes the sanitary towel from the banana fiber from St. Paul's. That is the gentleman. So all the VIOs feel welcome and feel part of the conversation. Of Africa, you don't be worried. So allow me to check if we have anyone from our Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, that is where volunteerism in Kenya is domiciled. If we have them in the house, please rise. Yes, at least we have a representative Ministry of Labor where volunteerism is domiciled. So ladies and gentlemen, without taking much time, allow me to introduce to you Ms. Lucy Ndungu, the Regional Manager, UNV Regional Office in Kenya, Eastern and Southern Africa. Madam Lucy, welcome, feel welcome. She will take us to the next part of the program in the next few minutes. Karibu sana. Karibu sana means feel welcome.
Thank you, Meshach.
You want to sit in the middle?
Sit in the middle.
Okay.
Right. Vijana oye. Good morning. Good morning. It's in the morning and I feel like the energy is still very low. Good morning. Good morning. Happy International Volunteer Day, although belated. And we are all here today to discuss volunteerism. And we have a very, very interesting panel with us. And I'm going to introduce them as they come. They are drawn from different countries in Africa because, of course, as we know and as we've heard from the permanent secretary from the government of Zambia, volunteerism is really something that is inherent in us as human beings. It cuts across all cultural divides and it cuts across all ages. So today and with this panel, that is what we're going to hear and also see examples of good volunteerism practices across Africa so that then we can see how do we innovate better for volunteerism towards the sustainable development goals. So without taking much more of the time for the panelists, first we have, just 1 second. We have Tracy Sibanda. Tracy is an advocacy and communications advisor for VSO Zimbabwe. Tracy is responsible for guiding youth engagements and the promotion and adoption of global volunteerism standards within her country. Welcome, Tracy. Next, we have Tumwebeze Sanyu from Uganda. Tumwebeze is a student who's awaiting graduation from Makerere University, where she's been studying business. She volunteers as an assistant programs officer at the United Nations Association of Uganda. Welcome, Tumwebeze. Next, we have Samuel Toure. Samuel is from Sierra Leone. He's the national coordinator for volunteers involving organizations. Samuel is passionate about youth and he's a volunteer leader with a strong voice for volunteerism in the global south. Welcome, Samuel. Next, we have Mabel Nedizwe. I hope I pronounced that right. Mabel is the Assistant Director at the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Arts in Zambia. Her focus is on youth empowerment through provision of various opportunities to young people ranging from skills training, general empowerment to youth resettlement and youth schemes. Thank you, welcome. Next, we have Nahashan Njuguna, who's working with UNICEF in Kenya, is a social protection officer. Nahashan pursued a Bachelor of Education degree in special needs in Moi University, after which he joined Go Child Network as a project officer. Nahashan uses his expertise in special needs education in technically leading in the creation of awareness and issues relating to disability and the concept of inclusive education. Okay, and lastly, we have our keynote speaker joining the panel again. We have the permanent secretary, Mr. Kango Achileshe, and of course he doesn't need introduction. So you can see, of course, from the diverse panelists that we have today, we're going to have a very interesting discussion. And we'll also engage with the participants. So towards the end of the panel, I'll then, give opportunity to several people from the participants here today to ask any of the panelists any question. First, before I start, I want to just ask each of the panelists here to tell us what it means to have a borderless Africa. What does it mean to you, Mr. P.S.?
I think a borderless Africa is going back to the roots of Africa. In fact, we were borderless nation. We were one nation. Yes, we had different tribes, we had different people, ethnic groupings, but then borders became an artificial way to define nations and countries, and they brought certain limitations. I think that going back to a borderless Africa is going back to a powerful Africa. It's back to an Africa that knows no limit. Everything that we need is on the African continent, whether it's tourism, whether it's gold, whether it's oil, energy, everything is here. What we need is a more united Africa, a more cooperating Africa in order to maximize the gifts that God's already given us. So that's what it is to me.
Okay. All right. I think the borderless Africa, I will say, the Africa that we want, actually. And then for us, in our minds as volunteers, especially working with different volunteers organizations across Africa, we have it in our mind that we are borderless. We are actually borderless because we feel it inside, we are interconnected with one another, and that we can be able to harness our potential by supporting one another, regardless of the borders that we see in front of us. But inside of us, we feel there is no border. And I will tell you, all of you sitting here, there is this spirit of sympathy and empathy you have within yourself for one another, despite the countries you find yourself. So this is the dream. This is the Africa that we want to see in practice. So borderless Africa actually is the answer to the Africa that we want, where I can move in as much as I want to support my colleagues across Africa, transfer my skills and my talents to all over Africa without considering okay, within us, I know moving from one place to the another, there is this level of visa stuff and all of challenges that puts in front of us. But the Africa that we want, we have in an Africa with no borders, as it is in us. We feel it in us. We would just want to ensure that we engage enough, ensure we bring it to practice where policies are dictating that. That's the Africa I'm looking at.
A borderless Africa is a happy and a developed Africa with volunteerism as a cornerstone. It is an Africa where every individual is giving in their skills, their time and resources, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to uplift their communities. And that will bring about a flourishing Africa with volunteers giving in their services, in education, in healthcare, and in sustainable development. And do you know what that means? It means that it will be an Africa where there is a shared sense of fulfillment. We don't only get fulfillment through financial prosperity. It is true, our communities will be resilient. We shall have strong economies, but then we are also going to have a sense of fulfillment deriving from contributing to a greater cause. That is the Africa I'm looking at. Thank you.
Imagine a borderless African renaissance that is embodied on the philosophy of Ubuntu. An Africa where each one feels the needs of the other through interconnectedness. Imagine an Africa where young people can move from one country to the other without restrictions to share innovations that they have developed. We saw an innovation of a solar car from Sierra Leone. Imagine that solar car being replicated in all the African countries without any restrictions. Imagine an Africa where young people are able to gather, feeling connected with the spirit of Ubuntu, sharing the richness of Africa's culture and diversity. Imagine what an Africa that would be like.
A borderless Africa is an Africa that transcends, where Africans transcend the limitations of nations and nationalities. I am Zimbabwean, I can travel to Kenya without a visa, I can trade, I can start entrepreneurship projects, I can collaborate, I can contribute to politics, I positively influence the political stability of a country, I have a say, I have a voice. That is the Africa that we want, where we transcend the limitations of your passport.
For me, a borderless Africa means that all individuals, regardless of gender, disability, culture, have a meaningful and purposeful participation in all aspects of life, be it economic, social aspects, as well as political, whereby collectively as Africa, we share an inspired to enhance inclusive growth and development, which means that as we progress and prepare, Africa as a continent, we achieve inclusive growth and development, whereby no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panelists. And Mabel introduced the concept of Ubuntu, which we call in many different languages from whichever corner of Africa you come from. If it's Uganda, it's Ubuntu Bulamu. I worked and lived in Uganda for a couple of years. If it's in Kenya here, I think it's the spirit of Harambee that joins people together. Last week I was in Tanzania. It's that spirit of Ujamaa that then brings people together. Can you just imagine in the 21st century where volunteerism is bringing together this spirit? It doesn't matter what kind of a name you're calling it in whatever corner of Africa you come from, but bringing these together to form a very interconnected Africa where there is free movement of people, there is free movement of trade, goods and services, and of course even more cohesion with the different communities in Africa. And just coming on to that, Bonicias, just to ask you a very quick question. Within the spirit of Ubuntu and, borderless Africa, promotion of volunteerism and, creating cohesiveness amongst the African communities, how does this do to the African pride and identity in your vision?
I think that's key to I love the word African, that as this generation, the millennial generation, the youth generation, moves into a new era, a new dispensation where you are the future of this globe. Africa is envisaged to be the youngest continent in the near future. The youngest continent in the near future. That's power right there. So if you can have a unified Africa, you have a unified market. What makes an economy stronger is the market, how many people you're able to sell your products to. And now, it's nice to be big in Nigeria, it's nice to be big in Kenya, but you can be big in Africa and the rest of the world. And so we're not even, as Africa, we're not even mostly competing on an equal footing, because you'll find that it's Nigeria against the world, Kenya against the world, and the rest of the continents unified, selling products to the rest of the world. The power about a borderless Africa means that we can bring our brilliant ideas, our innovations, and inventions, resource them, be able to sell them to ourselves and the rest of the world. So for us to become the great economic giant that we need to be, for Africa to arise and be what it's supposed to be, we have to get together and be borderless. We have to be driven by something that's beyond profit. It's got to be purpose. It's got to be a desire for us to want a better continent and to roll up our sleeves and be able to achieve that.
Sorry, my attention is drawn to one new panelist who's joined us from Red Cross Nigeria, Amin Abdul. Thank you. And of course, for the participants, the work of Red Cross everywhere doesn't need introduction. But of course, we'll give Amin 1 minute, just maybe 30 seconds, to quickly just tell us what it means to him about a borderless Africa and the work that he does with the Red Cross in Nigeria.
Thank you. Thank you. So I believe this summit is a timely one because it's coming at a time where Africa has so many borders. We here, we are young leaders, and most of us here will be our country leaders, lawmakers, and different things in the nearest future. And we can see how we have lines in between countries. I believe Africa should be a continent where we can freely move, do business, interact, and we're grateful for the platforms that we have, like the Red Cross, the UN volunteers, and other volunteering bodies that has provided us an opportunity to interact, share experiences, and share ideas. So I believe to be borderless as Africans, or to have a borderless Africa, is to have an Africa where I can freely come into Kenya, share my ideas, share my experiences, share my innovations with Kenya, and move down to Lusaka. From Lusaka, move down to Lagos, from Lagos to Pretoria, from Pretoria to Malawi, share whatever I have, and those people also come to these places, share whatever they have without the worries of, oh, I need to apply for a visa, I need to get a visa. It also has to do with us as individuals. I think we should try to be young people of good character, good sense of reception to one another as young Africans. And I believe with this we can promote an idea of a borderless Africa.
Thank you, Amin, and welcome to the panel. Now, I have a question to all the panelists here. In the different areas where you're working, whether it's with the government, whether it's with a volunteer involving organization, whether you're a volunteer yourself, there are different innovative approaches that, of course, each one of you engages in, and I believe contributes towards this African renaissance that we are talking about. So would you briefly just describe those innovative approaches that you're involved in, and the partnerships and the collaborations that you have that could drive this new renaissance that we're talking about?
All right, thank you again, Lucy. I think what we've tried to look at recently is we've been doing a lot of work on volunteering in our various countries, and we've seen the impact it has actually created at country level. But we as VIOS believes that the level of inequalities that exist amongst us is huge. So you have some countries with huge skills, good frameworks, and good infrastructure to power volunteering, whilst you have other countries that are way far behind with good skills, with good young people, vibrant enough to actually amplify those in governance kind of work where their voices has been heard. So what we are looking at this moment, we've come together as VIOS, including VIOS Kenya, to support countries with no policies, starting with my country, Sierra Leone. Not so recently, we had a kind of a good inception discussion with the government and with our evidences. Mind you, like I said, we've engaged a lot, and we have a lot of evidences to show the contribution of volunteers to national development. So we put those evidences forward to ensure that we convince our governments with the possibility of including not just developing a policy, but including volunteering in the national development strategy. 2 documents has been approved for Sierra Leone to be included. That's one. And then what we try to do, we try to expand beyond. So it is not just Sierra Leone. My next neighbor, Ghana, has a volunteer network, but they are like this, they're budding, like they are not being seen by the government. So what we are discussing within that region is to see how we take the same idea from VIONET to likes of Ghana, and also to my fellow Nigerian, where we are discussing to actually go to Nigeria, support them, build their networks, and position them at the heart of their own development, discussing and also like articulating the kind of policy they want for government. What we are also doing is to also bring the private sector to support the idea of exchange program. You know, like I'll tell you, all of you here, young people in this room, Africa is super creative. I have never seen a continent that is so creative like Africans. The point is that because we are so divided, we are not being able to harness this creativity. I like what you mentioned about Sierra Leone. There's a lot of these innovations happening, but I tell you, Sierra Leone is not alone. We have a lot of that amongst or within Africans, but just because we are locked, the barriers are there. I'm not able to come to your country to like exchange idea with you. How can we harness the innovative sector in Zambia? How can that be harnessed? Interchange between Sierra Leone, Zambia, and Kenya. So this is what we are trying to look at with the private sector to invest in the area of exchange program in Africa, so that you can come to Kenya, not just in the area of innovation, talk about entrepreneurship, talk about other major areas where young people can harness their potential, position them to be self-empowered and lead the change that they want. Another thing that we look at innovatively, which we feel supports, is the fact that we talk about Ubuntu, where I want to take it out of countries. Let me just put it, this is Africa kind of ideology, right? So if you move away from your countries, you come here, what happens is that you learn the Kenyan culture. I'm curious, since I came, I'm trying to talk Swahili. And my time in Rwanda, I wanted to talk in Kenya, Rwanda. So I'm urged to say that I'm learning my own continents. I'm not like locked in my own countries, knowing what only I know. So this is the kind of creativity we are bringing into, say, exchange program has a kind of like a ripple effect, and we are bringing the private sector to ensure that they support young people, young graduates, people who have experience in volunteering to move within the continent and support programs like youth development, creativity, the likes of agriculture, climate change. We've seen all of these things. So this is what we are pushing forward at the moment. Exchange program is key for us, not only to create development, but for us to realize ourselves as Africans in the spirits. We live beyond borders. We are not considered, so you are Ghanaians, some Nigerians or Sierra Leoneans. We are Africans supporting one another. Before I close, let me just give you one example. We had a cyclone in Dai, your neighbor. Mozambique was heavily affected. Zimbabwe was heavily affected. And then recently we had the earthquake in Morocco. They're heavily affected. We had experienced volunteers who wanted to go and support. But what's happened is that they are locked in their countries with no sort of financial incentiveness. But the worst of it, some of them have it, they are denying visa to enter. This is the Africa that we are, and this is not the Africa that we want. So this is the Africa that we are advocating to have, so that when problem happens within my continent, I'm able to go there to give my skill without no visa restrictions.
Thank you so much, Samuel. That is amazing work. Now, at United Nations Association of Uganda, we have what we call the African UN Youth Delegate Program. So we go to different countries, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and we get 20 youth from each country, train them about volunteerism, train them about outreaching, and we tell them to go to their societies, look at the issues that are affecting the youth, then come and go and solve them. That is one of the programs that we have, which is very impressive because we have begun to see change. And then maybe what she didn't mention is that I'm also a mentor at Young Professionals Mentorship Program, and this is a program that is global. People apply, young people, because we've realized that young people lack mentorship. We have the potential, we have the skills, but we are not mentored. So all the mentors at Young Professionals Mentorship Program and all the facilitators who come in to train us, take us through sessions, do this on a volunteer basis, and it has really done wonders. People have changed. I tell you, I think most of you think, when they think about volunteering, they think about volunteering with the UN, with VSO, but guess what? That's not volunteering. It is volunteering, but that is not where it stops. Like the PS said, I am actually impressed with what you said, because the very first time I volunteered, I went to campus and we have a health facility, and I then helped the cleaners clean. I gathered other students and said, let's go help them, because sometimes we underestimate the services that people do. But when you volunteer, you appreciate the work they do, and you begin to look at the work from different lenses. So we train the people at Young Professionals Mentorship Program, and we tell them that there is power in voluntary work. There is power in volunteerism, and I'm here because of volunteering. They go out, volunteer, and they are all giving testimonies. If you go online, you will see the work they are doing. Volunteerism is really transforming their lives from normal people to great people. And I can tell you that that was my first assignment in YPMP, to go and volunteer. And I went to the health facility, and I've never looked back. The whole of my campus have been volunteering at United Nations Association of Uganda, and it is the way I'm here. Don't underestimate voluntary work. Start where you are, like the PS said, and you'll see wonders. Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of Zambia, there's quite a lot that we've put in place in terms of our volunteers. In line with Vision 2030 of Leaving No One Behind, Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, and in line with the vision of our volunteer policy, like the PS indicated, we actually launched a whole policy on volunteerism in Zambia, whose vision is to embrace volunteerism in national development. And so what the ministry has then done is create a formal structure for volunteers. Last year, we rolled out a program that has put in place volunteers, internships, apprenticeship, and graduates. So we employ these young people, and then we attach them to different institutions depending on their qualifications. And I also want to mention that in line with our National Development Plan, we also have a provision to employ volunteers in our country. And we have a target of meeting 1 million volunteers. And so working with strategic partners such as the UNDP, UN volunteers, actually for UN volunteers, we have a target to employ 140 volunteers in our country. So Madam Moderator, I hope that is one of the areas you could look to partner with us in terms of making sure that we meet that target, which is in our National Development Plan. So a starting point in terms of having a formal structure to volunteerism in your countries is to ensure that it's embedded in your policies. Once your desire, your goal in terms of volunteerism is embedded in your policies, in your national development plans, and you have a policy to speak to it, then the government and the private sector will be driven to ensure that you enact it and you bring it to life. Thank you.
Voluntary Service Overseas is an international organization. We're based in over 34 countries, and we have about 16 countries in Africa. And as an international organization, the collaboration that we do is always online. So I could use that as an example to show how even beyond Africa, we are borderless in our own way. Where we have volunteers in Rwanda, we have them in Kenya, we have them in Zimbabwe, in Eswatini, and they're all coming together to support initiatives. They are all coming together in sessions that we call community of practice, where we share ideas, we share successes, we share best practices on what we have done that is working for us. And that is how we are breaking down those barriers to say that you're an international volunteer based in Kenya, but you can contribute meaningfully. I'm a national volunteer based in Zimbabwe. I am here in Kenya, where there is VSO Kenya, and I'm supporting all the work that we do as VSO globally. So there's a lot of innovation and, partnerships that we also engage in. We also work with the UN volunteers in all the countries. And something that we pushed for in this year was ensuring that we have volunteer policies and volunteer strategies at national level in all the countries. I'm proud to share that in Zimbabwe, we actually have standardized the engagement of volunteers by pushing for something called the Global Volunteering Standards, where we are saying that when a volunteer is engaged, whether in private sector or in civil society, their engagement should look at how they are treated when they come into the organization. Are they remunerated? Do they have the same benefits as a normal staff member? When you take a volunteer and you place them in an area that is prone to disasters, are you ensuring that they are safe? When we work with community-based volunteers that are devoting their time and their passion towards ensuring that a project is successful, are we ensuring that they are not only giving back to the community, but are they getting something from the organization? And lastly, I just want to share that we work with grassroots organizations, youth-led grassroots organizations that we support with funding, that we support technically to be able to do these projects in their communities that at the end of the day leave the community a better place.
For us, for UNICEF, more or less focuses on children and adolescents. And one of the key aspects is more or less aligning our programming to SDGs Vision 2030 as well as the African Agenda 2063. We have quite a number of programs, but we'll narrow down to 2 examples. Within social protection, in enhancing and have a disability inclusive, gender responsive social protection in the country. A case is in Mombasa, whereby we have a school transport system for children with disabilities. Within this particular program, borrowing from what is being done from other African countries, and knowing that education is the key to success and provides ensuring that children have access to education is one of the key critical areas that we envisage as a society. And having volunteers taking part in this particular program and ensuring that children with disabilities within their communities have access to education by providing support, that is through the community care and support systems, whereby children, whereby community members are able to contribute through volunteerism by taking these children to school, where in situations whereby their primary caregivers are not present, they're able to do that. And one of the other aspects is whereby volunteers are able to take part in providing basic therapy skills, basic therapy services to children with disabilities in within the special schools, as well the integrated schools, as well as at the community level or health centers. That is more or less an entry point for youths and other volunteers to identify priorities and key agendas and ideally their level of contribution towards society at large. Another key area is more or less at the national level, really identifying what is the key role a private sector can play in through their corporate social responsibility in ensuring that we have an inclusive society whereby no one is left behind. This means that bringing private sectors on board and harnessing their efforts towards also collaboratively with government in providing basic support to individuals with disabilities, to also youth and also women and girls. This is quite critical because then through that collaborative agenda and also strategy, private sector are able to meaningfully participate and meaningfully provide an opportunity to marginalized groups for them to take part in daily activities within the organizations, as well as have a meaningful and effective participation in all aspects of life. Probably as I close is that as Africa or as a continent, looking at the various experiences that each country has, and especially in implementing inclusive programming, we are able to borrow heavily from their experiences through a learning exchange, and through that, as a country, we are able to come up with key programming that addresses the various challenges and gaps that we have. One of them is more or less generating evidence that will inform programming, and also another one is more or less an aspects of data, and heavily leveraging on the existence of technology, which is ideally is one of the key tools that brings us as Africans and connects us as Africa as a continent together. Thank you.
For us at the Red Cross, I also double as the president for the African Youth Network of the Red Cross. So we have over 4 million volunteers in Africa. The Red Cross has created different programs and projects to further retain and keep our volunteers active. And humanitarian impact is basically driven by innovation and collaboration. So we have several programs such as Volunteers Engagement Strategy, which is a strategy that we review every 10 years. And that strategy contains how we recruit our volunteers, the kind of volunteers that we recruit, how we engage them, how we keep them engaged. And we also have a document called Youth as Agents of Behavioral Change, where we look at young people. We take young people from different communities, train them, build their capacities, develop their capacities, and ensure that they are agents of behavioral change in their various communities. And the Red Cross, basically, we also double as an auxiliary to the government. So most of these things can only be done if you have, let me say, an alliance with the government, because the government needs to give you a free hand to operate in any society. So what we do is we try to, every Red Cross of every country is established by an act of parliament of that country to give us a free hand to interact with the government, to let them know that firstly we are your auxiliary and you should let us perform these responsibilities, and give them the reasons why we are taking on some of the responsibilities that we're taking on. And we also try to educate our volunteers, because education is key. We try to firstly let them know definition of volunteering, according to us, is an act of service without expecting anything in return. Even though we do not, we try as much as possible to provide some remunerations when volunteers work, but we firstly let them know that you are coming here because you want to offer service to your community without expecting anything back. And for those of us that are religious, personally, I believe the only gift that God accepts is giving or helping those who can give back to you. So we try to, we have several programs, several innovations that we try to promote across Africa. And we have a program called the Limitless Program, where we allow volunteers in different countries exchange ideas, and then we award and reward the best innovation and the country that has come out with that innovation. We call Red Cross in different countries, we call them national societies. So we reward and award maybe it's a little cash to support that innovation that the person has come up with, and the national society of the person. And these ways we try to push a borderless Africa Renaissance through collaboration and innovation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists. And I want to come back to you, PS, and based on what we're hearing from all the panelists, we've heard about the partnerships that they have, whether it's with the private sector or with governments in the region. We've heard the contribution of governments in terms of programs and policies and schemes where they're trying to foster, volunteerism. But I want to hear from you, even as we're speaking about having a borderless Africa and what role volunteerism can play in this, what more do you see the governments in Africa doing to foster this borderless Africa? We know very well that whether we're talking about policies, and for instance, in Kenya, we have a draft bill on volunteerism. It mainly works within the jurisdiction of that government. But here we're talking about a cross-border, a borderless Africa. What more can the governments in Africa do to contribute towards this?
A lot of times, important question, moderator. A lot of times we've demanded as government for young people to have a mindset change. We've pounded on them to say, in order for you to achieve a lot and be an effective, efficient citizen, you need to change your mindset. There's a lot of mindset change that we as government also have to achieve in order to be efficient to this generation of young people. Why do I say that? While grappling to find resources for some of the programs that our assistant director ably put that we're running as a ministry, like we'll call it IVAG, internship, volunteer apprenticeship, and graduate program, knowing that it's essential to answer the call of unemployment. Zambia, like most African nations, is grappling with the issue of high unemployment levels amongst the young people. With our partners, the UN Family, UNFPA, we recently launched the status of the youth report, and in our report, Zambia is at 18%, which is very high. Now, one of the challenges is the employability of our young people. Every time they apply for a job, the first thing they're asked, fresh out of college, fresh out of university or wherever, skills training center, experience 2 years. And they're wondering, how am I going to get the experience? I just came out of school. And therefore, they need this opportunity in this volunteer program that is enhanced by government to gain that experience, so that as they leave the program, or if they want to veer into any other area or country, they have that answered, the aspect of experience. So the notion that funding volunteer programs is consumption has to change. It has to be perceived as capitalization, that we are investing in human capital. So a lot of times when budgets are being formulated, there's the issue of volunteerism, and it's perceived as consumption. And it's not consumption. So I think as government, that mindset has to change so that we are on the same page to ensure that we want to create this opportunity for young people. Looking at the African Renaissance, our founding fathers, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Julius Nyereres, the Jomo Kenyattas, the Kenneth Kaundas, knew that they could not achieve independence or fight colonialism unless they got together. It's the same concept, that until Africa gets together, we may not be able to achieve economic emancipation. Our female national football team qualified to the FIFA Women's World Cup in New Zealand. There were 4 countries that qualified. It was South Africa, Nigeria, Morocco, and Zambia. Unfortunately, Zambia got booted out and we lost. Now when Zambia lost, we started applauding and we started cheering for the next African country. It didn't matter that Zambia was not there. The fact that there was one African country, that's all that mattered to us, and we wanted Africa to win, because a win for Africa anywhere is a win for Africa everywhere. So it's important for us to begin to recognize our comparative advantages. Every time we're at an athletics competition and we're competing against Kenya, we don't even count it. It's okay, we have lost. The moment Kenya shows up for a marathon, we have lost. I don't know, they should do a science research. I don't know, maybe Kenyans have got special lungs. I don't know, there's something special. But we know that as a country and as a Ministry of Sports, that if we want to grow in sports, we have to engage Kenya, especially in athletics. We have to benchmark and say, how do you guys do it? How are you taking over the world in athletics in this area and that area? Kenya has to come to Zambia and say, you got tough boxers, you got good football players, how do you guys do it? And in essence, with this cross-pollination, we will make our countries better. Your country is much bigger in terms of population size. I hear about 51 million. We're about 20 million, but we have more land mass than you guys, but you have bigger population. We have a lot of food products that are just wasting away. You guys, can I say you guys, is that cool with you? You guys are on the cutting edge in terms of ICT. You're coming up with digital platforms that back in Zambia, when we look at that, we're looking, wow, that's awesome. You can come up with digital platforms for Zambia and make money there. Zambian young people can use that platform to sell the products to the rest of the continent. We need to get together. Thank you.
We enhance and put all these resources together to ensure that then we have a borderless Africa. Samuel, I want to come back to you and just ask, in response to what Chileshe has told us, what do you think the governments need to do more? I know, of course, you've had partnerships with the government, with the private sector, with other volunteer involving organizations in the continent, but what is that one missing link, or what you would want the government to do more in support of volunteerism, in support of a borderless Africa?
I think forefathers, like you made mention of, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah and the others, have actually fought so hard to give Africa independence, decolonize the whole thing. So I think this time around, it is upon us as Africans this time to actually now break the borders. So one thing that we want to call on governments at this point, and that's why I want to use this opportunity to maybe congratulate the government of Rwanda for a good step in terms of realizing that, oh, we are Africans, we need to open our borders. And also, I had a president of Kenya will be doing the same thing tomorrow. So congratulations to East Africa for taking a big steps, and we are looking forward for the others to follow suit. Addition to what you've said, I really like what you said, very important. I think one thing that we are calling for recently is putting value to volunteering. We want government to see volunteering as a pathway to employability. There are a lot of skills that we derive from volunteering. I can tell you, I for one sitting here, I have never applied for a job in my entire life. I have never seek to get a job in my entire life. I've always been a volunteer building my skill, and when I serve, people shut up and say, come and serve here, we offer you this. So this is to tell you that if you do likewise, I mean, you kind of like, we are not able to measure the skills that you get from being a volunteer. It's huge, very huge. My first course was journalism. I'm here now managing programs and projects across Africa. That's a skill I derive from volunteering. I cannot be able to measure that. So we want government to be able to make that kind of incentives in place to ensure that we support. Getting the skill from volunteering is one. You may volunteer and get enough skill, and then you sit back at home. Are you recognized? That's a question of no or yes. But in the instance of no, what do we want from the government is that we want the government to get a very good partnership between private sectors and the government to ensure that the skill volunteer gets from their volunteering are able to be meaningfully harnessed and involved in their engagements, so that at least the private sector can begin to look at skillful employment. Countries in Africa should look at skill-based employment. Talk to big private sectors coming in to employ them. Many of the times we see jobs and they begin to ask you for masters, 4 years experience, like you made mention, 5 years experience. You are actually already like killing the generations that are like looking a way to start. What about the other ones that are with skills, that are not with degrees? What happens to them? And then this is what now we are looking at a generation that is flowing. Like we are talking about Africa Renaissance, but we are also looking at most of our youthful generation taking their way abroad because they feel there are no options there. It's not that they cannot volunteer. It's like we do not have the frameworks or the policies or the structures or the incentives to recognize them, to support them, to celebrate them. For those who are already in this sector volunteering, they feel like they are alone. Before I give you back the mic, let me just say this. I am an African. But one thing that I see in Africa is that from our government, good. The problem is that we have a lot of national volunteers movements across Africa. And they are doing so much. But what we have experienced is the fact that our governments are giving priority to the bigger ones. And they do not listen to the voices of the indigenous. How do we actually ensure we own the process of volunteering in Africa if we are not being supported? So we are calling on the government to say, put a policy that the bigger INGOs that are coming to work in Africa must, it's not a should, must work with the volunteer network in that country to ensure that, one, their capacity is being built. 2, there is local ownership of that project. And number 3, the program is not being designed somewhere in the West and imposed in Africa. It's being designed by African, for Africa, in Africa, and led by Africans themselves. So we are calling on government for that again, to ensure that we localize, we take ownership of volunteering, but at the same time create platform to recognize existing volunteers. Award them in your national award scheme. Recognize them to receive support from private sector, and ensure that you invest in exchange programs where we take volunteers from Sierra Leone, bring them here, take from here to Sierra Leone, take from Zambia to North Africa, let them tell their own stories, let them go and support themselves. They understand their culture, they can integrate quickly. But we are here, we are receiving volunteers in Africa, we are not sending. Shame. It's a shame. I will tell you why. Because we receive, I think, I have been saying in many of the global platforms, we have been recipient for too long. So this time around, we want to be partner on the table. Let's sit together. We have something to bring on the table. We cannot be recipient. We have something to contribute. For us in the international volunteer space, maybe you understand what I'm saying. We are receiving too much of international volunteers in Africa, and our story is being told by someone outside there. So what we are saying is, if you send volunteers in Africa, we must send to your country back too. That is the North-South exchange program. So that is what we want government to do.
Yep. For some reason, this mic just decides to follow for the most inappropriate moments. Just to pick up something that he said and what data is showing us right now, at the UNV program, we've been looking at trends of volunteerism and where the numbers of volunteers are coming from. And increasingly, we see that, you know, what used to traditionally be, we are receiving more volunteers from the north coming to volunteer in the global south. We are seeing an almost equal trend right now with quite a number of volunteers from the south serving serving in other countries. For instance, if you were to look at even the numbers within our own region, we cover the UNV program regional office for Nairobi covers 23 countries in East and Southern Africa. What we notice is that we are almost at half-half. 50%. We have international volunteers coming in and national volunteers going to serve elsewhere. So I would really encourage, whether you're working with the government, whether you're working with a volunteer involving organization, whatever it is that you can impact a bit of change to promote volunteerism, then do it. Remember, we are talking about the power of everyone, the power of collective action. What if everyone did? If today, and we've been having a campaign where we are saying it's the 54 voices of Africa, and we've encouraged the youth in Africa to just, record a message, what it means to be African, what does it mean, what is the identity of you being African. And we're going to use that to try and have a compact where we can speak to our governments, we can speak to the African Union and say this is what the youth is saying regarding a borderless African continent where you're bringing people together. There's greater cohesion, there's free movement of people, and this is something that we hope we can present even to the African Union on Africa Day in May 2024. But just now to come to the audience, please feel free to ask questions. Very, very briefly, because we are very cognizant of the time, briefly mention your name and to whom you're directing your question. Thank you. Before we begin, if there's any question for the PS, please do that. I'm told that we have to excuse him, so that then we can do that as we close the panel session.
So just point and I will take the microphone. Oh.
Through the chair, thank you for granting me this opportunity. My name is Miriam Opondo. I'm the Vice President for the Africa Deaf Sports. So my question, I'm going to okay, sorry for that. We were just trying to arrange. So my question goes direct to the PS for sports in Zambia. You know, in Africa, we have been having some sports under the Federation of Sports in Africa for the deaf, and we have a governing body that is called CAD, Confederation of the Africa Deaf Sports. And you know, we do always have some Olympics, some for persons with disability and others for deaf Olympics. Like we had some Paralympics that happened in Africa and also in the world, that aside. And recently we had the deaf Olympics that happened in Kenya for Africa. So now that you are here, I just wanted, once you go back to your country, at least to give equal support to the deaf people. Because recently, actually this month, Kenya hosted the second Africa Athletics Championships. And to be very honest with you, we wanted Zambia to participate, and they were looking for sponsorship and partners who are going to support them. But to be very honest, they said that the government of Zambia didn't support them to come to Kenya and participate in those championships. So kindly, it's just a request, once you go back to your country, support the deaf sports in your country, because there are people like any other. Give them equal opportunities, just like those who have Paralympics and also the deaf sports. Thank you. Hello everyone, and good morning. My name is Ashura Michael. I'm a director at the National Youth Council. First, I want to thank you for this opportunity and also thank the moderators for the good job you have done, and welcome to Kenya, to all African countries. I hope once you are done here, you are going to enjoy our African heritage around here. So I just wanted to ask a question about, you talked about volunteers, and you talked about borderless, we are going to have those borderless trade that will be happening in Africa. So now, we want to know about those borderless trades. We have visa. The visa will be free, yes, and businesses will be done in the borders for free. So I wanted to know, if you have a free visa, what about the issue of tax? Will the tax be very expensive for people in Africa? Or because we need to support the youth so that they can also empower themselves economically? Thank you.
Thank you. Those are two already. Do you want the PS to pick them?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will attempt to answer the first question and just put it in context. Our government came into government in 2021 August. Literally, our first year was 2022. That's the first time I came into the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts. According to the budget that I found as permanent secretary in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Arts, there was only funding for one sport in the whole of Zambia, and that funding was for football. There was no funding for any other sport. By a pronouncement made by our president that all sports were to be treated equal, that no sport was greater than other. Based on that, we as a ministry went ahead and varied, I use the word varied, funds from soccer. Now, I'll also tell you why I was interested. Part of my KPI, or part of my targets, were to bring medals to Zambia. And that's part of my contract. And so I realized that Zambia was not doing well from the last time we won the African Confederation, AFCON, in 2012. We had been losing lamentably in terms of soccer. So it was not a good place to put your money if you wanted medals as a country. So we went ahead and decided to support 32 sports associations and federations, which included basketball, handball, volleyball, name it, including Paralympics, including deaf sports. So we have a history where we have funded Paralympics and deaf sports in terms of the entire budget, from allowances to visas to air tickets, etc., etc., etc. By the end of 2022, Zambia's highest medal count was 50 medals, gold, bronze, silver, in 1 year, from the history of our country. From 50, our country moved to 310 medals in 2022 in sports. In 2023, we're at 210. Now, 2023 has been a challenging year for us as a country. Why? Because some of you attended the Confederation of African Athletics, which was held in Zambia earlier this year. I'm not pretty sure which month. It was held this year. That took a toll on our budget as a country, because we hosted 43 countries in our country, in the city of Ndola. This year we had the FIFA Women's World Cup and so many other pressing needs. So we had a challenge, because come August 2023, we had exhausted our budget. And so usually what would happen is that sports associations and federations would not give us their fixtures at the beginning of the year. They would knock on my office and say, PS, we need to travel. And so this year we could only support about 25 sports associations and federations, which included Paralympics and, you know, games or sports where persons with physical challenges are. We have done that, but we will do more. And please forgive them and forgive us that they could not come this time around, but we will be sure to support them next time. God bless you.
Okay, we're going to pause the panel, just pausing it, because the PS has to leave. And before the PS leaves, we just want him to sign our wall of action, where we making a symbolic commitment. What if everyone did for a borderless Africa? And then we will come back and take a few more questions from the audience.
Thank you. Bonapiers, kindly come with us to the wall of action. Other panelists will also sign once we will be done, but Lucy and the PS come. The questions are going to be answered after this.
Meshach, back to you. Questions from the participants. We'll take about, I see there are so many hands. Meshach. Okay, Kevin, you can help us with the mic. And please, very, very briefly, ask your question so that then we can manage time better and possibly have more people asking questions.
And two. Okay, I'm Tom Juma from Transoya. And I had a question for PS, but unfortunately, due to unavoidable circumstances, he has gone. But I think my question will go to all of you, depending with the country that you are coming from. That you understand the challenges that persons with disability are facing in your countries. And when you talked about things to do with voluntary services to the community, it becomes a challenge for us who are with disability. I'm very happy one of the panelists is one of us from a disability community. Perhaps he may answer this question very well. But supposing I want to join one of the organization, maybe to render my voluntary services to that company, and you find that attached to that call, you may be perceived negatively because of your status. And for this, maybe you cannot blame them, but that is an attitude that maybe we Africans have, that person with disability maybe cannot be given an opportunity to perform voluntary services. Maybe from the countries that you are coming from, what challenges are you experiencing? And if indeed there is a lot of challenges, what measures do you have in place to make sure that even persons with disability are considered for voluntary services in different organizations from your country? The second question, we believe that there is nothing without us is for us. And we in Kenya, we say that disability is not inability. We want opportunity but not sympathy. Do you get my point? We want opportunity but not sympathy. In the countries that you are coming from, my friend from Sierra Leone and my sister from Uganda and other panelists, what challenges are you facing in your countries, and the mitigation measures that you've put in place to make sure that we remove the barriers, because we are talking about youth innovating a borderless African renaissance. What are you doing to make sure that we overcome the challenges that we people with disability are facing in our country? Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Koya, and I am here because I really want to ask a question concerning the vulnerable kids. My story is about, I was coming from a very vulnerable family, and I was raised in a children's home. So when I came out of the children's home, I decided now to volunteer giving back to the community, to the children's homes. At the moment, we have 5 children's homes that we are volunteering in terms of quality education, mental health programs, and talent. So what do you do like to support the vulnerable in the community? Because these people, they have like tough stories. They are coming from very poor backgrounds and everything. But again, these are the same people who are joining the community with the bitterness and everything. So what are you doing as a organization to support the children's homes in the community? Because that is my concern, and I would like even to have volunteers, because sometimes we have volunteers who come to train these children, but we pay them. So what will you do concerning now these children's homes? Because they are going through a lot of challenges. I lost one of my friends that we were raised in the same children's home because of mental problem. But now how can we cap this situation in the children's home? So I need your help to answer that question, and we need to go back to the children's home, because these are the same people who are suffering and they are coming back to the community. So what are you doing about that? Thank you so much.
Please be brief in your questions. Please, when you're asking a question, just be brief and to the point. Thank you.
So I'll give a lady. Yeah, sorry, I need to do gender, sorry.
And we'll first pause after that question.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Faith Wangare Nduta from Kenya Youth Organization Nakuru chapter. I'm happy to be here, and to our panelists addressing my sister from Uganda, thank you for your presentation. You talked of a happy, devolved, borderless Africa that volunteerism is the cornerstone. And throughout our discussion, we might have mentioned, but we have not tackled the challenge we are facing as volunteerism on having decentralized experience, decentralized guidance, experience, and engagement in volunteerism. What are we doing about that? And then how, to all the panelists, how do we create that positive, inclusive and borderless culture in volunteerism across our globe, that is, not the globe, but our continent, Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have the panelists respond to those questions first, and I can see I am being reminded of time, so if we don't have time to just take another round of questions, please, if you can even write down your question, and we shall endeavor to respond to you, and your contacts, and we shall endeavor to respond to you, and of course the panelists too will do that. So over to you, panelists.
Thank you so much. Faith, before I get to your question, I just want to say one thing briefly. We are talking about a borderless Africa, but when you go to our countries, when you go to Africa, there are very few people with national identity cards. Those with national identity cards, can you raise your hands? Very few. So there are millions of Africa that are not identified. And here we are talking about a borderless African renaissance. In Uganda, it really takes a long time to get a national ID. It took me 4 years. But I want to applaud Rwanda because you can get a national ID in 3 days, and if it's really an emergency, you can get it within 1 day. So I am urging the governments to make the process easier for people to be identified, because if you do not have a national ID, you cannot access financial services. You cannot move from one country to another to go and volunteer. That is something that is so important. So back to you, Faith. Yes, there are challenges in volunteering, and challenges are always there, but we always look for ways of overcoming them and continuing the good work. So I will give one of the ways and one of the things that we are doing to overcome the challenges. Like one of you asked a question about inclusivity. What we do whenever we have a program, we always make sure that we ask those who are disabled to include that they are disabled, so that we cater for them, so that we give them a priority, because most of the times there are people with the challenges. And maybe one of the other challenges that volunteers face is sometimes they volunteer and they don't have the, like transport to go and do what they are supposed to be doing. So we put a minimum fee to make sure that they have the transport to go and do what they are supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Nahashon wanted to say something.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I'll try to be brief. One of the questions I think is in relation to persons with disabilities and access to opportunities, especially when it comes to volunteerism. Yes, indeed, persons with disabilities face quite a number of challenges, and one of them being the attitudinal barrier. And for us as UNICEF, what we've tried to do is do what we call a bottleneck analysis of a situation of persons with disabilities in the country. And ideally, attitudinal barrier came as one of the biggest challenges that they face. So with the programs that we are implementing with the government, one is to ensure that we do awareness creation. And ideally, we envisage a society whereby inclusion is more or less a culture rather than an awareness or an advocacy aspects. So for us, that is one of the key approach that we see and we work closely with. And especially when it comes to OPDs, Organization of Persons with Disabilities, including inclusion of this Organization of Persons with Disabilities in various avenues to ensure that they're able to amplify their voices and be able to participate meaningfully by building their capacity and by creating forums and opportunity for them. is one of the key interventions or avenues to ensure disability inclusion. At national level, one of the other things that we are working on is, and it was really launched recently, is the support needs for persons with disabilities assessment report. That particular report identifies awareness creation on persons with disabilities are one of the key recommendations that then will be able to help us inculcate inclusion of persons with disabilities as a culture within our society. And this will be then cascade down to private sectors and other institutions. And I think another thing is more or less data and evidence generation. Because when you have evidence that persons with disabilities face this and these challenges and barriers, then you are able to respond and come up with interventions that create an opportunity for them to access services and be able to have a meaningful and effective participation in society. I think I respond to the other question is more or less on opportunities for vulnerable groups. For that one, as a country, we launched the National Care Reform recently. And within that particular reform, one of the key aspects is the institutionalization, which means we try as much as possible to ensure that children that are in institutions are able to come back to society and reintegrated in community. And this, we worked closely in a few counties, supporting some of these institutions to enhance the institutionalization and do community integration, whereby children are able to be moved back to community and are able to be integrated in community. And we're also focusing on children with disabilities who are in these institutions, so whereby then we provide the necessary support, be it the aspects of more or less a cash transfer, which is quite critical. And then this should be integrated into government portfolio when it comes to inclusive social protection programming, which then informs on the aspects of community care and support systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nahashon, and the distinguished panelists that we've had today. Unfortunately, we'll have to close this at this juncture, but you will have colleagues from UN Volunteers Program going around and collecting the questions that the people who had raised their hands were not able to ask. We shall endeavor to respond to as many of them at the booth, and for those ones that we shall not respond to today, we commit to following up with you. So please just put your contacts on the paper where you're going to write the questions, and then we shall respond to you. I will give 1 minute to an artist who's been capturing the thoughts and the ideas coming out in this room and depicting them in an art, that we are going to see, and then I'll hand over to Meshach to take us to the next part. Thank you very much. I have been your moderator. My name is Lucinda Ngo. I'm the regional manager for UN Volunteers Program, East and Southern Africa.
Thank you. You're done? Oh, the artist. Our panelists, as you leave the stage, just kindly walk to the wall of action and help us sign the charter just behind there, and we'll lead you to the wall of action. Do we have the...
By creating an equitable society.
Sika, you ready?
By supporting refugees.
Okay. So thanks to all our panelists as they go to the wall of action. If you see the UN volunteers with that jacket, kindly hand over your question to them. There's also a booth for UNV where the booths are. You can visit there anytime from now all through. And there is also time after this, shortly after the panelists have signed, we need to give youth time to interact as well with the panelists, and I think one-on-one is even more powerful. We are 1 hour later than the time we were allocated by the organizers of this. We don't want to risk not being given another chance in another Youthconnekt, because we don't adhere to time allocated to us. So we apologize for those. I know this is a conversation that can go even for tomorrow and the day after. But we are here. All of us will be interacting with your questions at different levels. So we are still here for you. We will interact till the end of the day. Sika, tell me if you're ready. Kevin? Okay. So we want to show you what has been captured, but in a nutshell, I think we know the what. The what is volunteering for a borderless Africa. We know the how, because the how is what has been a discussion. The discussion here has been the how. And the where is Africa. And the why is a question I don't even want to ask, because it has also been discussed extensively. And the who is you and me and other Africans who are not in this room. And the when is now. So in a nutshell, to get a borderless Africa, the how is what the panelists were talking about. The what is volunteering for it. The when is you to decide, when are you starting? When are you beginning? Because our theme for IVD this year is the power of everyone. So when are you becoming that everyone? The volunteers are already here, but someone in the room might decide I'm starting tomorrow, or I'll start next year, or the year after next year. The when is also your decision to make. And so we want to see how the artists have been able to capture all this thing in a graphic and in a nutshell. And then after that, we kindly would request each one of you, if you decide the when, you're starting today, the wall of action is there. So we will all sign the charter because we commit. So the when is your decision, but we would love everybody to start now for a borderless Africa. Okay, here comes. How long do you need? 2. Take 1.5.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Chela, who is a local Kenyan young woman artist and who has been listening intently to everything that has been discussed today and tried to capture it through an illustration. So as she's speaking, we are going to try and also screen her work so that you can see. So a round of applause to Chela.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and I did manage to do some illustrations while the conference was going on. And I think the biggest takeaway that I got was start right where you are. Africa can redefine itself through the spirit of volunteerism. So you don't have to be an artist, an architect. Just start with what you have, start in your community. And there was a call to action that was made that all the youths do a recording of what it means to be African, and then they can do a presentation, and yeah, we can find a renaissance through that. And yeah, that's what I was working on when the session was going on. Yes, and the innovative ideas that were captured were creating policies with the government and encourage exchange programs, and yeah, just people to be encouraged to be volunteers. And also one thing that came up was that incentives could be given to volunteers for their time. Yes, thank you so much. I'll be able to share more details later. There was a sketch I did. I'm going to clean it up. There was someone who was doing sign language. Yeah, there was someone who was doing sign language at the side of the podium. I'm going to add it. It's not the final.
Thank you. You have captured the sign language. Okay. You're going to do that. Thank you. Thank you. It has to be done, of course. Ashura, you know you're my friend. How can it not be done? Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a vote of thanks to all the volunteers in the room. May I hear the voices of volunteers in the room? Thank you, thank you. All the volunteers within the country, those who are visiting from other countries, in all our organizations within the VIOs, those who are volunteering by themselves without being part of these organizations, you are still important to the cause. And I want to thank Madam Lucy for leading this session in the best way possible. I think we are going to have to do something formal with the Youthconnekt organizing committee for every year to have something like this as a session that is standardized within the Youthconnekt Summit all through. Thanks to all our panelists who are here. All of them, are they still in the room? All the panelists who are here, I can see Sibanda there. I don't know where Ture is, but I think they are all around. You will have to interact with them and understand in details what they are doing in their countries. All the government officials who are here, beginning with the PS who has left and all other governments who may be in the room, we want to say thanks. Thanks to the UNV Kenya team for leading all these volunteers into making a session like this. And finally, thanks to the government of Kenya for accepting to host this kind of summit. We hope Kenya will have time again to host it in the years that are coming after 54 other nations. And then we want to say thanks to the committee who allowed us to have this session within the Youthconnekt Summit. I know it was not easy. We tried our best to have more. We even wanted to have 3 hours so we could run other programs after the conversation, but we couldn't. So thanks to the committee for giving us this particular session to run within the Youthconnekt Summit. I think I want to now usher all of us to the corner to just go and sign as we leave the space. Thanks, Bwana Chair. Questions will be given.